Hey everybody, how are we doing? First day of remote learning. I hope you guys are getting the hang of it. I know there's probably been some kinks along the way, but we're going to be able to get this. We're going to do this. All right. So this is our first history class online. I'm really bummed out because I just recorded a history lesson video and I was almost done when the battery on the laptop went dead and I lost the whole thing. So Meredith, I feel your pain. Anyway, so I'm starting over. We're gonna do it again. And anyway, well, here we go. So yeah, history class. So by now you should have figured out that you need to go on to Microsoft Teams, and your lessons are all in Microsoft Teams. Now, if you're watching this video, that means you've already done that, so you should be good to go. In your history lesson, make sure you do all of the assignments, and then I want you to respond to the assignments with 3 comments about something that you learned in the lesson. So whether it is in my lecture, whether it's in something you read, or any of the other resources I might give you to do, whether it's a section of your textbook that you read or a paper. So for instance, in this particular lesson, there's no part of the textbook assigned to read, but I attached a paper that I want you to read. It's a paper I wrote in college about feminist theory. And by the way, there are some things about that paper that, looking back and reading over it, I probably would have written a little bit differently now than I did back then. So just keep that in mind as you read it. But anyway, yeah, feel free to interact and answer my questions, even though I can't hear you. Gather your family together so you can discuss and have classroom discussion with your mom and dad and your siblings. Come on, you can do this, right? Anyway, a little bit of review, just really quickly. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I want you to take notes in this class just like we did in history class at the ping pong table. The things that I write on the chalkboard, you write in your history notebook. Keep them going in order. So I think the last thing that we wrote was that girls tend to be aborted more than boys. So our last lesson was on eugenics and abortion and all that, and that's where we ended. So you want to start the next lesson. It's actually lesson 34. History lesson 34. Feminism. America. And you should be getting this video on the 30th, even though I'm recording it before then. I hope you can read my writing. I know my writing has not improved at all since the coronavirus, but I'll do my best to make it legible so you can read it and write it. The nice thing about being on video is if you get behind in your notes, you can just pause the video and catch up. Right? Very good. All right, so a little bit of review. Girls tend to be aborted more than boys. Very good. Those of you that were following along, great job. A disproportionately high number of what race of women get abortions? Black women, yes. What organization is the leading provider of abortions? Planned Parenthood. Who was the president of Planned Parenthood who advocated the use of abortion for eugenic purposes? So this guy wanted to use abortion to cut down on certain unwanted people, whether it was black people or handicapped people or that kind of thing. Who was it? Alan Guttmacher. Who was the first president and the founder of Planned Parenthood? She wasn't necessarily an advocate for abortion, but she believed in using birth control to limit or keep babies from being born that we don't want. So the whole emphasis behind Planned Parenthood was to cut down on black people, handicapped people, other unwanted people, because she was a big eugenicist. Who was it? Margaret Sanger. Very good. What is the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable? Eugenics. Who was kind of the founder of eugenics, the eugenics movement? Francis Galton. And Francis Galton was a half-cousin of, got this? Charles Darwin. Yes. So you can draw a direct line from Darwinism to abortion, right? As a result of the eugenics movement, thousands of Americans were forcibly sterilized. Kind of the ultimate expression of the eugenics movement happened in World War II in Germany, when a certain individual tried to annihilate Jews and handicapped people and other unwanted inferior races and people. That's known as the Holocaust. Okay. So let's get into today's lesson. Feminism. So feminism is a movement that started. We've been talking about the progressivist movement. There were good things about progressivism, certain reforms that happened, child labor laws and things like that. That in some ways were probably good. Pushback against pollution. The national parks. We talked about how some of us kind of like having national parks to go to. That came out of progressivism. But there were also some things in progressivism that were not good. One of the things that came out of progressivism was feminism, and it was a huge, massive movement that started in the mid-1800s, and it still impacts us today. We're still affected by feminism. So just a couple of weeks ago, soon after we got out of school for spring break, I don't know if I was listening to something or reading something, but it was talking about Elizabeth Warren dropping out of the presidential race. So we already talked about that. We took her picture down. So she dropped out, and she made some comment after she dropped out that she's just so sad that little girls are going to have to wait another 4 years before a woman becomes president, because she's the last woman that had a legitimate shot at running for president, right? Tulsi Gabbard is still in, but she doesn't count because she's so far down that she's not going to win. But Elizabeth Warren was so concerned that little girls are sitting around saddened by the fact that they're going to have to wait another 4 years before a woman becomes president. As if little girls care, right? Anyway. But that's, and it kind of reminds me of Kamala Harris. We talked about when she dropped out. She made the statement that America is not ready for a woman president. That's why they aren't electing one. So they're kind of falling back on this sort of victimization. The reason I'm not winning is because I'm a woman. Anyway, whether or not somebody thinks that it's a good idea for a woman to become president, I would say that they are not losing because they're women. I think, good or bad, I think America is very ready to elect a woman president and would do it in a heartbeat if they felt like the right one came along. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton came within a whisker of beating Donald Trump. She actually won. I say she came within a whisker. I mean, he won the election fairly soundly, but she actually won the popular vote. She actually got more votes than he did. She just didn't get as many electoral votes. So we've talked about that. But anyway, so she came very close to winning and becoming president. And she didn't lose because she was a woman. She lost because people didn't like what she stood for, and probably there was other things I didn't like about her either. But anyway, uh, saying all that to say that feminism is still a thing. It's still very much going on in our culture and in our world. And one thing, I'll get to a lesson really soon, but one thing about that is, why is it such a big deal for a woman to be the president? Why does that matter so much? And it's so interesting because if gender is just a construct of our minds, if gender is fluid, if you can just wake up one morning and decide, I want to be a girl today, and then the next morning, I kind of like to be a boy, or one of the other 70 different genders that Facebook has listed. You can just decide whatever you want to be. Then why does it matter whether or not a woman becomes president? And I was listening to Ben Shapiro, and he made this joke that I thought was kind of funny. He said that Donald Trump should just come out one day as a woman and then say, "Hey, I'm the first woman president." That would be pretty funny. But anyway, that as ridiculous as that is, he had a great point. Why does it matter if a woman becomes president? If any man can just decide to be a woman whenever he wants to. Anyway. So we're going to talk about feminism. There's 3 waves of feminism. Okay, so feminism started in the mid 1800s, and it started with the first wave. And the first wave feminists began in the 1830s and lasted till the 1900s. First wave feminists were mainly concerned with something called women's suffrage. I'm not sure why they use that word suffrage, but basically it's another term for the women's right to vote. Women wanted the right to vote, right? Now that sounds pretty reasonable. I mean, it sounds fair, right? That women should be able to be involved in voting and choosing politicians and choosing who's going to rule our country and so forth. That sounds pretty reasonable. It's not a huge deal, right? But that's mainly what the first wave feminists were concerned about. There were other things, and there were things that came along that even then that maybe weren't so good. But for the most part, what they stood for was simply they wanted the right to vote. So that's first wave feminism. Second wave feminism. Second wave feminism starts in the 1960s and lasts till the 1980s. Second wave feminism is concerned about some different things besides just the right to vote. By now, I think they pretty much all have the right to vote. Second wave feminism ups the ante a little bit, and they want some more things. There's some things, or put it this way, they have some other things that they are concerned about. One of the things that second wave feminists are concerned about is domestic violence. What do we mean by domestic violence? Does anyone know? What is domestic violence? My understanding of domestic violence is it's violence that happens within a home, within a family, right? So women are concerned about men beating up their wives, being violent against their wives, and maybe their daughters too, I don't know. But then that kind of thing happened, and often if it happened, it was kind of pushed under the rug, and people knew that such and such a woman was being beat up by her husband, but you know what? We don't want to meddle in their affairs. We just kind of want to leave them alone. It's their problem, and there's not much we can do about it, right? That was kind of the attitude. And feminists came along and said, no, we need to do something about this. We need to stop domestic violence. Okay, so again, not a bad thing, right? An okay thing. Sorry, my phone keeps dinging. I'm just gonna Uh, turn it off here so that it does not disrupt our class. Please don't let your phone disrupt our class either. So domestic violence was one thing they were concerned about. Another thing they became concerned about is women in the workplace. Okay, now women working is not new to us, right? That's not a big deal. We're so used to that. It's just so common. I know in maybe Mennonite circles it's not as common, but in the greater culture, it's a very common thing. Well, it wasn't back then. Okay, it was rare for women to be going out and making a lot of money, or making any money for that matter. And women began to say, we want to work. We don't want to have to stay home, feed the babies, wash the clothes. We want to go to work. Now, again, I have no problem with women going to work if under the appropriate circumstances. Let me make sure I clarify. Under the appropriate circumstances, I have no problem with a woman getting a job. Some of you girls will get jobs when you get out of school, probably, right? So it's not necessarily wrong that they wanted to be in the workplace, but of course that led to some other things later that became more of an issue. Maybe we'll get into that. But women in the workplace was one of the things. Another thing is reproductive rights. What do we mean by reproductive rights? Now, that could mean a lot of things, but one of the main issues at stake with reproductive rights is, anyone know? Abortion. So, for the first time in our nation's history, abortion starts to be put on the table as a legitimate way to manage reproduction, to keep from having children. Instead of just planning your family otherwise, now if you get pregnant and you don't want the baby, you can abort it. You can end the child's life. That became something that people began to push for, especially feminists. Right now, if you think about it, that goes well with the one before. Because if you're a woman and your main concern is that you want to have a career, you're working hard to climb the ladder and be successful and make a lot of money and be a career woman, and then you get pregnant, what's that pregnancy going to do? It's going to disrupt that plan, right? It's going to stop you from being able to be what you want to be. So what do? Get an abortion. Okay? So that's when the push for abortion began to strengthen in our country. So that's first and second wave feminism. Let's talk about third wave feminism, which lasted from the 1990s to the early 2000s. So this is in my lifetime, the beginning of most of your lifetime. You're kidding. I just dropped the chalk and broke it. My day just got even worse. I lost a video, now I dropped the chalk and broke the chalk. Anyway, third wave feminism lasted into the early 2000s. Again, this isn't that long ago. So what was third wave feminism about? Again, much the same as second wave. feminism, just more intense. So a lot of the same issues as second wave feminism, but just kind of amped up and more intense. But there's a few more issues that become part of third wave feminism. So things like sexual liberation. In other words, women want to be able to be promiscuous. They want to be able to live a life of sexual immorality. They don't want to have to commit to, one man, one woman, typical monogamous relationship for life. They don't want that Christian ethic of one man, one woman, covenant love. They don't want that. They want to be liberated. They want to, live a free sexual life. So that's one thing. And another one that starts coming out in third wave feminism is, very interestingly, transgenderism. Which really seems weird, right? That just seems odd that feminists would push for transgenderism, because it seems like that just undermines feminism. Because if it doesn't matter what your gender is, why should feminism be a big deal? If you're pushing for female rights, but if a woman just wakes up one day and decides she can be a man anyway, what does it matter? So it's just kind of confusing. One thing that starts coming out in third wave feminism is there is a lot of diversity starts coming into feminism. And what I mean by this is that feminists don't all agree. There are many different kinds of feminists, and some of them have very strongly opposing positions. So one issue, for instance, is the issue of pornography. There are a lot of feminists who will say that pornography demeans women, that if the pornography industry should be illegal, it should be done away with because it's demeaning to women. They have a good point. That's very, very true. Feminists should be against pornography because it does. It objectifies women and it demeans them. There are other feminists, however, that argue that if a woman wants to make her living being a pornographer, that's her choice, that's her right. Let her do whatever she wants. And so the objectification of women, so that this whole debacle that happened at the halftime show this year with whatever that gal's name was, a lot of feminists will defend that and say she was just expressing herself, she can do whatever she wants. But other feminists say no, that was not good for women because it objectifies them. So again, there's an example of how there is actually a legitimate concern on the one hand, but on the other side, there's hypocrisy and discontinuity. But anyway, the point is there starts to be divisions amongst the feminists during third wave feminism. So let's talk about fourth wave feminism. Fourth wave feminism started around 2010 and is still alive and well today. Can you guys read that? I hope so. Fourth wave feminism, 2010 to present. Okay, still going on today. What are the characteristics of fourth wave feminism? Hashtag, can anybody finish? Me Too. The Me Too movement. So, what is that? Is it good? Is it bad? Now, here's the deal. The Me Too movement did expose some really bad things that were going on in our culture. There have been many, many instances where men have taken advantage of women physically, sexually. It has happened. And the Me Too movement exposed some of that. So some high-name, high-profile dudes like Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer, the guys who were habitually taking advantage of women in a way that was wrong and evil, okay? And they were exposed. They were brought at least to a certain semblance of justice. So that was good, and the Me Too movement exposed a lot of that, of men who were wicked, who were, continually taking advantage of women, sometimes little girls, and so forth. So that Me Too movement did expose some of those things. However, we all know that it's been taken too far, and situations where one woman accuses a man of doing something and there's not really any evidence that it's actually true, and there are women out there, and men for that matter, who think that you should believe her regardless of whether or not she has any evidence to corroborate what she's saying. And that's dangerous. That's just, there's real problems with that. So the Me Too movement has gone too far, and there are women who want to say that they're victims because a man looked at them cross-eyed or whatever, or flirted with them or whatever. And again, I'm not saying that's okay necessarily, but you know what I mean. Women who are they're just taking this way too far. So that's become a problem. So that's one of the aspects of fourth wave feminism. Another one is what we refer to as equality of outcome. Okay? So equality what is equality of outcome, and why does it matter? So there are people in this world, feminists in particular, who believe that women will not have received true equality until, on average, they are making just as much money as men in every job. Okay? They believe that they will not have achieved equality until there are just as many women in politics, there are just as many women senators, congresswomen, governors, and just as many women, being elected president as men. Once we've reached that 50-50 equilibrium, and women are being elected, in politics, and there are just as many women CEOs running businesses, just as many women doing all those quote-unquote important things, then we will have reached equality. Okay? That's what we refer to as equality of outcome. Or you take a certain industry like doctors. Okay? Once women doctors, on average, are making just as much money as men doctors, then we will have received equality. And they even take it farther, and they say, once women in general, let's say the entire United States of America, once women in general are making just as much money as men, then we will have reached equality. Because on average, I think if you look at the statistics, overall, women make a lot less money than men. Okay? And if you just kind of look at that, initially it just kind of seems like, yeah, that's not fair, right? It seems like it's not fair. But is that the case? So here's the thing. Equality of outcome is often compared to equality of opportunity. Okay, so let's just put versus equality of opportunity. So we, those of you that were in school last year, we watched a video. Can't remember the guy's name. He was being interviewed by this gal from the UK, and she was talking about this, and she kept trying to put him on the spot. And he was arguing for the fact that equality of outcome is a very, very bad idea, because pay or job status cannot be based on gender. It cannot be based on whether you're a man or a woman. You shouldn't hire somebody just because they're a certain gender. And this carries over into race and into other things too, right? You shouldn't hire somebody just because they're white. And on the other hand, you shouldn't hire somebody just because they're black. Why should you hire someone? You should hire them because they're good at what they do. They're good at what you want them to do, right? They can do the job that you're hiring them to do. That's why you should hire them. When you choose a doctor, are you going to choose a doctor just based on whether it's a man or a woman? Or are you going to choose a doctor based on whether or not they really are good at what they do? If you get the coronavirus, you got to go to the doctor, and you have a choice between several doctors, and one of them knows more about the coronavirus than all the others, you're going to choose the one that knows more about it regardless of whether or not it's a man or a woman, right? So pay, jobs, politics, all of that should not be based on if you're a man or a woman. It should be based on how competent you are. Okay? Does that make sense? So I'm not saying that women should be paid less if they're doing just as good as a man is. So if there's a male doctor and female doctor, and by the way, I think in the medical field, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think maybe in the medical field, women might be paid more than men. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that. But if in the medical field, if there's a female doctor and a male doctor, and the female doctor is much better at it than the male, she should make more money, right? That's how it should work. But if the male doctor is better, he should, right? So it cannot be based simply on gender. It needs to be based on competency. And so what feminists are trying to do is they're trying to make so that women are paid just as much regardless of how well they can do the job. Okay, and another thing under this that we need to think about is money and how much somebody makes really the most important thing, right? Is that really what makes life valuable and worth living? Or is it possible maybe that some women find joy and purpose in staying at home and raising children, not making any money, you know? So this whole thing is based on the idea that somehow you have to make more money in order to live a full life, right? So anyway, that's fourth wave feminism. So let's talk about some legitimate concerns that feminism has. So has some legitimate concerns. What do you think they are? So if you look back over our notes or some of the things I've said, what do you think? Are there some things that jump out at you that are like, yeah, they have a point there. That might be something that's okay for them to be advocating for. What do you think? How about violence against women? So again, starting with second wave feminism and carrying over to all the way to fourth wave feminism, one of the things that feminists have been concerned about is violence against women. And that's a legitimate concern. You know, throughout history, men have physically beaten women. It's a sad thing, but again, overall, men tend to be physically stronger than women, and they use that strength to beat their wives or other women into submission. That's not a good thing. That's evil, right? So feminists, that is one of the legitimate concerns that feminists have had. Another one is the objectification of women, and we've talked about this one. And again, the feminists are kind of split on this one. Some of them really are concerned about it. Others are just kind of like, hey, if a woman wants to act like that and wants to live like that, that's her choice. But it is one of the legitimate concerns of at least some of the feminists, is the objectification of women. Okay? So those are some legit concerns. But let's talk about some of the problems, some of the things that feminism has brought into our culture that are not so good. So undermining God's design for female rules. So again, God designed men and women. He said it was good. Remember in Bible class we talked about this, and when he created man and male, created male and female, he created them both in the image of God, and he said it's very good, right? But he gave men and women differing rules. Not that men can never do things that women do, and not that women can never do things that men do, but there are some differing rules that God gave, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. When the world pushes back against those things, it hates those things. And so feminists push back against biblical Christianity quite often because they don't like these God-designed rules for men and women. So anyway, that's one of the problems. It's also failure to see the beauty of genuine Christ-honoring femininity. You see that? Failure to see the beauty of genuine Christ-honoring femininity. I'll read it again in case you can't read it. Failure to see the beauty of genuine Christ-honoring femininity. So, girls, don't be afraid to be a woman. Femaleness is a good thing. Be the woman God created you to be. Okay? It honors Him. It's a beautiful thing. The world fails to see that so many times. Often, feminism, especially fourth wave feminism, has led to false accusations. Can't write today. False accusations and stereotyping men. So there are some men out there who are monsters. They prey on women, and every woman to them is an object. There are some men who can't see a woman without seeing a sexual object. Okay, that's not good. That's wicked. That's evil. Not every man is like that. Okay? And we men, guys, us men, we need to fight against that temptation to objectify women. Women are human beings, created in the image of God. We've talked about this, but remember it, okay? Don't objectify them. See them as people, as persons, as human beings, okay? But again, there are feminists who, in their eyes, every man is just a sadistic monster who wants to take advantage of women. Every man is the same. They're all like that. And some feminists put forward that kind of attitude and that kind of mentality. It's not good. Not every man is like that. Okay? Don't be that kind of man, right? Another one is sexual immorality. So yeah, just the whole desire to have sexual freedom has come about as a result of feminism. And of course, a big one is abortion. which is one of these massive inconsistencies because, as we talked about in the last lesson, more girls are aborted than boys. So feminists who are fighting for the rights of women, also many of them, there are some pro-life feminists, but many feminists fight for abortion rights as well, when most babies that are aborted are girls. So they're defeating themselves by fighting for abortion. They're killing their own, if that makes sense. And of course, another one that really doesn't make sense is transgenderism. Because again, if femaleness and feminism matters so much, then what's the big deal? Why is transgenderism such a big deal, right? So anyway, that's feminism. I want you to think about how this impacts our culture today, because it really does. It has massively infiltrated our culture. This is the air we breathe. This is the water we swim in. Feminism is everywhere, to the degree that many men are afraid to stand up and be men because they're afraid the women won't like it. And we men need to stop being afraid of women. We need to stand up and lead. That's what God designed us to do. So we need to be leaders. And really, when we do that, for the most part, women are going to say, yes, we need that. Especially godly women. They're going to be like, go for it, right? They may not always agree with us, and sometimes they might not like our decisions, but overall, they're going to be glad when we lead. And that's what we need to do. Men need to lead, okay? We need to stop apologizing all the time. Now, there's appropriate times for apologies, but we need to stop being afraid of feminism. We need to stand up and be leaders, okay, guys? And you girls, don't be ashamed of being a woman. It's a beautiful thing. Be the woman God designed you to be. Embrace your femininity. Thrive in it. Flourish in it. Now, we don't have to follow culturally defined stereotypes of what women are and what men are and what women look like and what men look like. We don't have to, be these perfect, physical specimens of manhood and womanhood. That's not what it's about. It's about being Christ-like. A Christ-like man, a Christ-like woman, right? So let's not let the culture define this for us. Let's do it God's way. So yeah, feminism is a big deal. Came out of the progressivist movement. I had talked to you guys about a video I wanted to show you about a woman at an abortion rally, and I'm not going to do that because in the video she uses some really strong vulgarity, and then she started talking about some female things that just I don't think I want to show it. But anyway, I want to read to you what she said. And one thing you got to understand is that when she was giving this speech at this abortion rally, she was screaming. She was so fired up, and she was just, and it's just what she has to say is incredible. It's really incredible. The gal's name was Busy Phillips, like B-U-S-Y Phillips. I don't know where she got that name, but anyway, she's a comedian and an actor and all that. But here's what she says at this abortion rally. Let's see here. Phillips, who had an abortion at age 15, said the procedure enabled her to have nice things in life, including her 2 healthy children, a hybrid car, and her beautiful blankety-blank home. Let's see, where's the rest of it? Oh, here we go. There I was, sitting in Los Angeles in my beautiful office of my late-night talk show, Phillips told the crowd. Soon I would be driving my hybrid car to my beautiful blankety-blank home to kiss my 2 beautiful and healthy children and my husband, who had taken the year off to parent so I could focus on my own career. Phillips paused before belting out. I have all of this because I was allowed bodily autonomy at age 15. Now, what she means by that is she was allowed to have an abortion. At age 15, she was able to kill her baby, so the baby did not get in the way of her having a nice car, a nice job. Now she's famous. She has a talk show. She has a nice husband, nice kids. She's living the American dream because that baby was not allowed to disrupt that. You see those problems, and see that's the problem. It's not just about feminism. It's not just about progressivism or Darwinism. It's about pure, unadulterated selfishness. That's what it is. Selfishness. Abortion is selfish. It's about taking the life of a human being because they're inconvenient. Okay? And feminism, again, not all of it, but a lot of feminism pushes abortion because they want to have their convenience. Right? All right, guys. First lesson in the books. Make sure you get all the assignments done. I'm not going to write the homework on the board because it's all right there in Microsoft Teams. Okay, so make sure you look down over that, do all your assignments, push the button that says I think it says to submit assignment or something like that. When you're done, I have it due by 8:30 tomorrow morning. Please feel free to call me if you have any questions. Stay healthy. Hang in there. See you later.